Everyone in Los Angeles knew the name Dominic Reeves. Not because he sought attention. In fact, Dominic did everything in his power to avoid it. But when you are 36 years old, own the most successful tech investment firm on the West Coast, drive a matte red Rolls-Royce Ghost, and look the way Dominic looked, 6'2", built like a man who still trained at 5 in the morning regardless of what city he was in, attention found you whether you wanted it or not. He had grown up in Compton. Not the Compton that people romanticized in movies, but the real version: tight streets, underfunded schools, neighbors who disappeared and never came back, and a mother who worked 2 jobs and still somehow found time to make sure her son did his homework every single night at the kitchen table. His mother, Patricia Reeves, was the most disciplined human being he had ever known. She used to tell him, "Dominic, the world will look at you before it listens to you. So make sure what it sees first is dignity." He carried that with him everywhere. He had earned a full scholarship to UCLA for computer science, built his first app at 23, sold it for $4 million at 25, and by 30 had quietly become one of the most respected venture capital investors in Silicon Valley. His firm, Reeves Capital, had backed 11 companies that went on to become household names. He did not party. He did not chase clout. On Friday nights, he usually drove himself, alone, no driver, through the city with the windows slightly down, thinking through business problems the way other men played golf. That particular Friday night in October, he was driving down Wilshire Boulevard after a dinner meeting that had ended earlier than expected. The city was alive in that specific Los Angeles way, neon and palm trees and a sky that never fully went dark. His phone was on silent. His mind was quiet. Then he saw her. Part 2. The woman on the pavement. She was kneeling on the sidewalk outside a restaurant called Lux, one of those Beverly Hills spots where the waiting list was 3 months long and the menu had no prices on it. Her name was Claire Bennett, though Dominic did not know that yet. She was 29 years old, wearing a simple dark navy sweater and dark jeans, notably underdressed compared to the 3 women standing several feet away from her in tight, bright cocktail dresses. One wore red, one wore purple, one wore yellow. They were laughing, not the soft, embarrassed kind of laughing that people do when they don't know what to do in an awkward situation. The loud, pointed kind, the kind designed to be heard, designed to humiliate. Claire had her hand on the ground, trying to push herself back up. Her heel had caught in a crack in the pavement and snapped clean off. She had fallen hard on her right knee, and there was a small tear in her jeans where she had scraped the concrete. She was not crying. That was the first thing Dominic noticed about her. Her jaw was set, her eyes were bright but dry. She was embarrassed. Anyone would be, but she was not letting them see her cry. "Oh my God, Claire, you are so embarrassing," said the one in red, covering her mouth dramatically as she laughed. "We cannot take you anywhere," added the one in yellow, shaking her head. "Just leave her," said the one in purple, tugging at red dress's arm. "The Uber's here, let's go." And they walked away. They actually walked away. Claire watched them go. She didn't call after them. She didn't beg. She simply pressed her lips together, looked down at her broken shoe in her hand, and took a slow breath. Dominic had already pulled his rolls to the curb. Part 3. The question. He stepped out of the car unhurriedly. He didn't rush over to her in a dramatic way. He simply walked to where she was still kneeling, crouched down to her level, and extended his hand. "Here," he said quietly. Claire looked up at him. She blinked. Not at the car, not at the suit, but at his face, and specifically at the fact that his expression carried zero pity and zero condescension. He wasn't looking at her the way people look at someone who has just embarrassed themselves. He was looking at her the way you look at another human being who needs a hand. She took it. He helped her to her feet steadily, making sure she had her balance before he let go. She was standing on one flat foot and one broken heel, which made her slightly lopsided, and she glanced down at the shoe in her hand with something between frustration and exhausted humor. "Fantastic," she muttered under her breath. "It was a clean break," Dominic said, nodding at the heel. "That happens with that type of soul on uneven pavement." She looked at him. "Did you just analyze my shoe? I notice structural things." A pause. "Are you hurt? Your knee?" She glanced down. "Just a scrape. I'm fine." She looked back up. Thank you. Really. You didn't have to stop. My mother would have a lot to say about me if I hadn't. He said it simply, without performance. Claire almost smiled. Almost. She looked in the direction her friends had gone. The Uber was long disappeared. She looked down at her phone. No messages, no texts checking if she was okay. Nothing. She looked back at the man standing in front of her. I should call a rideshare. Dominic was quiet for a moment. Then he said the words that would later become the center of every conversation at every brunch table and office break room in Beverly Hills. Will you come to my home? Claire stared at him. He continued, completely calm. I live 12 minutes from here. My housekeeper, Mrs. Gonzalez, is still there tonight. She never leaves before 9. She can find you something for your knee, get you a proper pair of shoes or at least something to walk in, and I'll have my driver take you wherever you need to go. No obligation, no expectation. He met her eyes. You just fell on concrete and your friends left you on the sidewalk. The least the universe owes you tonight is a cup of tea and a bandage. She looked at him for a long moment. She was smart. She had learned to be careful in this city. But there was something about the way he had said it. Not charming, not slick, just decent. You have a housekeeper named Mrs. Gonzalez, she repeated slowly. She makes very good tea, he said. Claire looked at her broken shoe one more time. Then she looked at him. Okay, she said. Part 4. The house on Mulholland. It was not a house. It was an estate. Set back from the road behind iron gates and mature olive trees, lit warmly from within, the kind of home that looked like it had been designed by someone who understood that real luxury was about quiet and space rather than noise and excess. Claire sat in the passenger seat of the Rolls and said very little on the drive over. She wasn't nervous, exactly. She was recalibrating. The evening had taken a turn she had not anticipated. Mrs. Gonzalez, a warm, round-faced woman in her 60s who greeted Dominic with the familiarity of someone who had known him for a decade, which she had, took one look at Claire's knee, clicked her tongue, and produced a first aid kit with the efficiency of a field medic. She cleaned the scrape, applied antiseptic, and produced a pair of clean white sneakers from somewhere in the house that were almost exactly Claire's size. I keep extras, Mrs. Gonzalez said matter-of-factly, in a tone that suggested this was not the first time her employer had brought home a situation requiring practical solutions. Dominic made the tea, himself. Claire watched him from the kitchen island. He moved in his kitchen with the same unhurried, purposeful manner he did everything else. No performance, no look-at-me energy. He simply made the tea. They sat at a long wooden kitchen table with their cups, and they talked. Not about his wealth, not about her evening. They talked about books first. She had a copy of a James Baldwin novel in her bag, which she pulled out when he asked what she was reading, and his face shifted into the expression of genuine recognition. He had a first edition of the same book in his study. Then they talked about work. She was a middle school art teacher in Inglewood. She had grown up in Bakersfield. She had moved to Los Angeles 6 years ago with $300 and a portfolio and had spent years substitute teaching before finally landing her own classroom. She loved her students with a ferocity that was evident even in the way she described a 10-year-old boy named Marcus who had started drawing portraits of his grandmother. Dominic listened, fully, without checking his phone. Those women tonight, he said eventually, carefully. Were they close friends? Claire wrapped her hands around her cup. I thought they were. For about 2 years, I thought they were. She paused. I think I confused proximity with friendship. He nodded slowly. That's an easy mistake in this city. Is that why you don't seem to have any friends? She asked, then immediately looked mildly horrified at herself. Sorry, that came out wrong. But Dominic laughed. A real laugh. Not the polished, controlled kind. An actual laugh. No, that was accurate. Part 5. What she didn't know. What Claire did not know, what she had no reason to know, was that Dominic had been engaged once. Her name was Vanessa. She had been beautiful, socially brilliant, and relentlessly upward mobile. They had been together for 3 years. He had bought the ring. He had planned the proposal. 2 weeks before he planned to propose, he found out that Vanessa had been telling people, friends, colleagues, her own family, that she was with him primarily for the security. That she found him emotionally too simple. That she was already planning what she would do with the prenuptial agreement when the time came. He had called off the engagement quietly. He had not dated seriously since. That had been 4